The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3156. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3156, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety, the second engrossment.
I call on the member from Ramsey, Representative Mariani, to your bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members, and trust everyone as well. House File 3156 maintains and advances public safety in Minnesota through and beyond this current pandemic. And it does this by making critical appropriations to the Department of Public Safety, to the Department of Corrections, and to the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission. And it also advances public safety by authorizing ways to safely operate our state prison facilities during the COVID peacetime health emergency. House File 3156, members, is a statement that public safety matters. It meets our duty to provide this core function of government. The bill offers each of us as legislators an opportunity to say that even in the midst of a dangerous pandemic, the personal safety of Minnesotans matters. That as we work through economic harm caused by that pandemic, the state will not stop its work to help keep Minnesotans safe, our communities safe. That this House stands with correction officers and staff, and with our law enforcement, peace officers, and with victims and survivors of crime. The bill recognizes that in order to continue meeting this core function of government, we must maintain the ability to staff our corrections and public safety agencies, to have the backs of those who have our backs in running correction facilities that are safe and humane, whether that's in Moose Lake, where as of last week, members, when I checked, there were 2 correction officers who were severely sickened with the COVID virus, or in St. Cloud, or in Shakopee, or at our Stillwater facility. And so, members, the biggest appropriation in House File 3156 is to meet our obligation to these public servants as captured in the state contract agreements that were recently made between them and our state negotiators. And members, that comes in a little bit shy of $13 million in this biennium. This bill also listens carefully to the independent office of the Corrections Ombudsperson that calls for safely lowering prison populations by the use of early release of those who are held for nonviolent crimes, who are low risk to offend, and are already scheduled to be released in the near future. It extends the authority to the governor, to the corrections commissioner, to do this in a peacetime emergency. And by the way, members, the bill takes language offered by one of our Republican colleagues on the committee, language that she drafted. And we did that, frankly, because public safety and saving lives is not a partisan issue. This bill recognizes that it's time. This bill also recognizes that it's time to stop the historic, reckless, non-caring attitude about rape victims that's been typified by the broad systemic ways in which the collection of evidence for prosecution of violators has been mishandled for years. It follows the recommendations of victim survivor advocates and best practices from across the nation to have our Department of Public Safety store, test, and track all sexual assault examination kits. In effect, the bill says that even in the midst of a pandemic, those who violate other human beings cannot do so with impunity and will be held accountable. And members, that provision is just a little bit north of $3 million in the biennium. So members, public safety matters, and that's what this bill constantly screams out. As our Bureau of Criminal Apprehension labs have struggled to keep up with the demands for forensic lab work to prosecute violent crimes, this bill funds that at right around $1.3 million in the biennium. As our local counties struggle to keep up with doing the necessary work, providing community supervision for those released from prisons, as we must do safely to slow the spread of the pandemic, this bill provides funds for them to do this work at the county level. And members, that's about $7.5 million in the biennium, and it's spread across the entire state. Rounding out the bill, it covers a small deficiency at the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission, $8,000 this year and $36,000 next year. There's no new staff that's involved here, members. This small entity has been operating with the same complement for several years now, and I think has a smaller complement than used further back. It's small, but it's had a big impact for accountability with crime and advancing reform of our criminal justice system. Finally, the bill authorizes a task force in corrections to review the unfair use of certain aiding and abetting criminal statutes that contribute to our large correction costs. This is a provision that was brought to us by Representative Dean. And members, I would argue that it's never the wrong time to find ways to lower state costs. And this task force offers us the opportunity to do that safely, as other states have, by possibly cutting prison beds currently occupied by people who arguably should not be there. Members, I've covered the major elements of this public safety finance bill. It doesn't do all the good things that we had debated this year. I had a number of bills from last year, a few from this year, where we were pushing on a number of accountability and criminal justice reform, investments in community-based interventions, all good work that we absolutely should be doing. But the COVID-19 pandemic has really forced this legislature to focus its efforts on saving lives that the virus threatens, while focusing on government functions that we most need to maintain and address. Our House committee went through that focus process, and we all should be proud of the work that they did leading to this bill. It truly merits our collective support. Members, I want to thank our committee members for their work this year. I want to acknowledge the collegiality of our Minority Leader Representative Brian Johnson. I'm not saying that Representative Johnson supported this bill, but I am saying that his counsel and commitment to our work has been greatly appreciated. I also want to acknowledge our truly amazing professional staff, Mr. Ben Johnson, Mr. Jeff Peeble, and Mr. John Walsh of House Research and Fiscal Staff, Ms. Ellen McDaniel of DFL Research, Mr. John Holquist of GOP Research, and of course the hardworking Jason Chavez, who's our my committee legislative aide, and our dynamic committee administrator, Mr. Jamel Lundy. A final note, because I suspect that this is going to come up. The other body has chosen to be silent on the duty to do what must be done, and that is in this House bill to keep Minnesotans safe. I will say that while my chair counterpart in that body has indeed recently called for the appropriations in this bill in an appeal letter that I joined him on to leaders in both bodies and to the executive, there is, however, at this time, no action from the other body. And so, members, because public safety always matters, even in a pandemic, it is my humble request of you as members of the House to pass this bill to reassure Minnesotans that we will problem solve the finance issues related to it, and that we will prioritize for their safety, and to give the other body the opportunity to engage us on how to do that. With that, Madam Speaker, there are amendments, and I stand for questions.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Munson moves to amend House File Number 3156, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A20-0793.
To the author of the amendment from Blue Earth, Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Thank you, Chair Mariani, for the work that you put into the bill and for hearing this amendment in bill form in your committee, I think on 4 different occasions, and the amendments that were adopted to it and its passage from your committee. We have before us an amendment for Cassie's Law. This was named after a woman named Cassandra Berry, whose father has been around the Capitol these past 2 years. Many of you have met with him. He's been advocating for a change to Minnesota law to stop criminalizing mental illness. Cassie was 26 years old when she gave birth to her beautiful daughter, and about a month later had to have hernia surgery as a result of her pregnancy, and it was just after this hernia surgery that she had a massive stroke and caused significant damage to her brain, and they had to amputate her leg to save her life. But due to the brain damage in her frontal lobe, she lacks impulse control and has been caught up in our criminal justice system, as many people have who have had traumatic brain injuries or strokes or have fetal alcohol syndrome or spectrum disorder. This bill provides a safety net to catch those individuals who are not best served in prison. Cassie woke up this morning in solitary confinement in prison. She will be in solitary confinement until October when she's released. This bill provides a neuropsychological exam for people who have suffered stroke or traumatic brain injury or fetal alcohol spectrum disorder if they're convicted of a felony. It is important to make sure that we are addressing mental illness in the state, and this bill will go a long way to help those individuals that are caught up in the criminal justice system. It is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. The neuropsychological exam can be used by the judge when they are doing their sentencing to make sure that the punishment fits the crime. If someone has a mental impairment resulting from the stroke or TBI or fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and they lack substantial capacity for judgment when the offense is committed, they can take that into consideration. This isn't going to be applied for somebody running a stoplight or embezzling money from their company because they fell in the ice 20 years ago. This will give the judges a tool that they can use for proper sentencing. There is no state cost to this bill. There's no fiscal cost. There is a local fiscal note. There's a local fiscal cost. We've asked for a fiscal note months ago, but it's impossible to know how many people will qualify for this. It's impossible to understand the cost of this locally. A neuropsychological exam can cost somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000. But incarcerating someone can cost between $32,000 and $42,000 a year. It's also important to understand the human cost of incarcerating people with mental illness, and it may not be the proper treatment for them. So people like Cassie can find the treatment they need, and we can understand that they have a reason or they had an impairment when that crime was committed. So members, I ask for your support today. We have over 20 members of this body that have signed on to this bill as a co-author. We have 5 in the Senate, bipartisan support. This is a very good bill, and members, I would ask for a roll call vote.
A roll call being requested. Do I see 15 hands? Do I have 15 hands? In the phones, the emails? The clerk, are there hands being raised? Not seeing 15 hands in the chamber, I will now ask members to send an email from their official House email to account to hands@house.mn with the word hands in the subject line if they would like a roll call vote. We will wait 60 seconds to determine if we have 15 hands for a roll call vote.
Madam Speaker, what's that email address again?
The address to be sending is hands@house.mn with the words hands in the subject line if you would like a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, we will have a roll call vote. Further discussion to the Munson Amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Representative Mariani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be very brief. We did hear this bill. One of the things that's particularly painful for me, and it's one of the things that unfortunately we lost, with the COVID threat, were several efforts to address mental illness in our corrections, in our criminal justice system. Representative Chair Considine had a very important bill that unfortunately carried a bit of a hefty fiscal note, but could potentially have been a game changer out into the coming years. And I hope that we revisit that when we come back. But nonetheless, the impact of mental illness on our correction system is an incredibly taxing presence. If you visit any of our sheriffs, many of our prosecutors, they're kind of banging their heads against the wall in terms of a system that really is not equipped or designed to be effective with Minnesotans who suffer with mental illness and related symptoms. And so it seems to be, members, that we were favorable absolutely to this bill in our committee. And it seems to me that this is a small but important thing that we could be doing this year. I've met Mr. Berry. I'm a dad and a grandfather, and so I totally connected with him in terms of watching his daughter get lost and spiral down in a system that's just ill-equipped. And so this is a small step. It isn't going to help her, but potentially could help other individuals by giving judges tools to begin to align our systems to be helpful with individuals who suffer traumatic brain injuries. So with that, members, I would encourage your support.
Further discussion, Representative Johnson.
Madam Speaker, members, I would suggest not voting for this amendment. There's a very high cost, not to the state, but to our counties. As Representative Munson said, $15,000 to up to $4,000 for these exams. The information I have is $1,200 to $2,400 per exam. And this is done after court, after sentencing, or between the the guilty verdict and sentencing. Now, our court system has what's considered a Rule 20 hearing. And a Rule 20 is when these exams are done. If a psychological or neuropsych exam is needed, that's when it's done before trial. Because if it's found out that they're not competent to stand trial or understood what their crime was, they're not taken to court to be convicted of that crime because they did not have the capacity to know it was a crime. This needs to be done pre-trial, during the Rule 20 hearing. Now, I understand the circumstances, the unfortunate circumstance of what happened to that young lady. But what's not been told to a lot of people, the issue that happened to her happened after she had been sentenced. This all occurred after she had been convicted and after she had been sentenced. So this isn't going to help her at all. This is just going to hurt our counties, putting more cost and burdens on the counties, raising costs to our counties and our property taxes. And like I say, I understand the issue with that young lady, but again, this needs to be done before trial, before we have the court costs, because if it's found out that the person is not capable to stand trial and understand the crimes they were convicted or charged of, they will not be taken to court, and those court costs won't occur. So again, this bill, all it does is raise costs to the counties, and it's unneeded, and this is already done by statute in the Rule 20 hearing. Thank you.
To the author of the amendment, Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Johnson for bringing a voice of fiscal conservatism to this debate. We have taken this into consideration. Offering this type of neuropsychological exam prior to conviction would cast an enormously wide net and cause significant burden on the counties. That's why we worked to change the bill to only apply this if they fall through those important safety nets in pretrial, to make sure that they're competent to stand trial. This is only if convicted, and only if convicted of a felony, that we would offer this as a cost that would be covered by the county. The reason why this is so important, because Mr. Barry's family is not a family of means. They couldn't afford to pay this cost without reaching out to friends and families and people in the community to raise the money to perform the neuropsychological exam so that it could be given to the judge prior to sentencing, and the judge couldn't use that neuropsych exam. We should not have a system of law that only affords an opportunity to people with means to pay for this to get out of going to jail or have a lesser sentence. That's why it's so important that we treat people equally under the law. And we have done everything we can to restrict the amount of people who would qualify for this neuropsych exam paid for by the counties. I've met with people from the counties and prosecutors and with advocates for people with traumatic brain injury, and it is unknown exactly how many people this will apply for. But I will commit to using state dollars in the future to compensate counties that are burdened with this cost, because it is so important that we not criminalize mental illness, that we not let people fall through the cracks. I hope that there's few people that are impacted. It'll keep the cost down, and it'll mean that our courts are working fairly well the way they are. But if one person like Cassie has to sit in solitary confinement, that's one too many. We need to do more to treat mental illness instead of criminalizing it. So we've restricted how much money we spend on this. We've restricted how many people would qualify, and that's why it's important that it be after conviction. So I would urge members to support this bill. It's a good bill, and we have bipartisan support both in this chamber and in the Senate. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A20-0793 amendment.
Acom.
Acom, aye.
Acom, aye. Albright. Albright. Anderson.
Anderson, no.
Anderson, no. Backer.
Backer, no.
Backer, no. Bonner.
Bonner, aye.
Bonner, aye. Barr. Barr, aye. Baker. Baker, no. Becker, Finn.
Becker, Finn, aye.
Becker, Finn, aye. Bennett.
Bennett, no.
Bennett, no. Bernardi.
Bernardi, aye.
Bernardi, aye. Bierman.
Bierman, aye.
Bierman, aye. Bow.
Bo, no.
Bow, no. Brand.
Brand, yes.
Brand, aye. Cantrell.
Cantrell, aye.
Cantrell, aye. Carlson, A.
Carlson, A, aye.
Carlson, A, aye. Carlson, L.
Carlson L. Aye.
Carlson L. I. Christensen.
Christensen, I.
Christensen I. Claflin.
Claflin, I.
Claflin I. Considine.
Considine, aye.
Considine I. Daniels.
Daniels, no.
Daniels no. Doubt.
Doubt, no.
Doubt no. Davids. Davids no. Davney.
Dabney, aye.
Davney I. Dean. Dean. Damath.
Dean, aye.
Dean I. Damath. Damath no. Detmer.
No.
Detmer no. Drazkowski.
Dreskowski, aye.
Drazkowski I. Eklund.
Eklund, aye.
Eklund I. Edelson.
Edelson, I.
Edelson I. Elkins.
Elkins, aye.
Elkins I. Erickson. Erickson.
No.
Erickson no. Fabian.
Fabian, no.
Fabian no. Fisher.
Fisher, aye.
Fisher I. Franson.
Franson, I.
Franson I. Freiberg.
Freiberg votes yes.
Freiberg I. Garofalo. Garofalo no. Gomez.
Gomez, I.
Gomez I. Green.
Green, no.
Green no. Grossel.
Grossel, no.
Grossel no. Grunhagen.
Grunehagen, no.
Grunhagen no. Gunther.
Gunther, no.
Gunther no. Haley. Haley.
Haley, no.
Haley no. Halverson. Halverson I. Hamilton.
Hamilton, no.
Hamilton no. Hanson.
Hanson, aye.
Hanson I. Hassan.
Hassan, I.
Hassan I. Hausman.
Houseman, I.
Hausman I. Heinrich.
Heinrich, no.
Heinrich no. Heinzman.
Heinzman, no.
Heinzman no. Her.
Hearn, I.
Her. I. Hertos. Hertos. Hornstein.
Hornstein, aye.
Hornstein I. Howard.
Howard, aye.
Howard I. Hewitt.
Hewitt, aye.
Hewitt I. Johnson. Johnson no. Jordan.
Jordan, I.
Jordan I. Jurgens.
Jurgens, no.
Jurgens no. Keel.
Keel, no.
Keel no. Cleavorn.
Cleaborn, I.
Cleavorn I. Cagle.
Kegel, I.
Cagle I. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, I.
Katiza Watun I. Kosnick.
Cosmic, no.
Kosnick no. Krisha.
Krisha, no.
Krisha no. Kunish Podine.
Kunish Podine, yes.
Kunish Podine I. Lehman.
Lehman, no.
Lehman no. Lee. Lee I. Lesh.
Lesh, aye.
Lesh I. Liebling.
Liebling, I.
Liebling I. Lean.
Lean, aye.
Lean I. Lilly.
Lily, I.
Lilly I. Lippert.
Lippert, aye.
Lippert I. Listlegard.
Listlegard, aye.
Listlegard I. Long.
Long, aye.
Long I. Lucero.
Lucero, yes.
Lucero I. Lewick.
Louis, no.
Lewick no. Mahoney.
Mahoney, aye.
Mahoney I. Mann.
Man, I.
Mann I. Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani I. Marquardt.
Marquardt, aye.
Marquardt I. Mason.
Mason, I.
Mason I. McDonald.
McDonald, no.
McDonald no. Mecklin.
Macklin, no.
Mecklin no. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller I. Moeller.
Moeller, I.
Moeller I. Moran.
Moran, I.
Moran I. Morrison.
Morrison, I.
Morrison I. Munson.
Munson, aye.
Munson, aye. Murphy.
Murphy, I.
Murphy, aye. Nash. Nash. No. Nash, no. Nelson, M.
Nelson M. I.
Nelson, M, aye. Nelson, N.
Nelson N. No.
Nelson, N, no. New. New, no. Noor.
Nor I.
Noor, aye. Nornis.
Nornis I.
Nornis, aye. Novotny.
Nobody no.
Novotny, no. O'Driscoll. O'Driscoll, no. Olson. Olson, aye. O'Neill.
O'Neill, no.
O'Neill, no. Pulowski.
Pulowski I.
Pulowski, aye. Purcell.
Purcell I.
Purcell, aye. Petersburg.
Petersburg no.
Petersburg, no. Pearson.
Pearson no.
Pearson, no. Pinto.
Pinto I.
Pinto, aye. Poppy.
Poppy, I.
Poppy, aye. Poston.
Poston no.
Poston, no. Pryor.
Pryor, I.
Pryor, aye. Quam.
Quam, no.
Quam, no. Richardson.
Richardson, I.
Richardson, aye. Robbins.
No.
Robbins, no. Runbeck.
Robbins, or Runbeck, no.
Runbeck, no. Sandell.
Sandell I.
Sandell, aye. Sandsted.
Hampstead, I.
Sandsted, aye. Sauk.
Sauk, aye.
Sauk, aye. Schumacher.
Schumacher no.
Schumacher, no. Schultz.
Schultz, I.
Schultz, aye. Scott. Scott. Stevenson.
Stevenson I.
Stevenson, aye. Sundin.
Sundin I.
Sundin, aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski no.
Swazinski, no. Tabke.
Tadke I.
Tabke, aye. Tice.
Tice, no.
Tice, no. Torkelson.
Torkelson no.
Torkelson, no. Erdahl. Erdahl, aye. Vang.
Vang, I.
Vang, aye. Vogel.
Vogel no.
Vogel, no. Wagenius.
Wagenius, I.
Wagenius, aye. Waslawick.
Woslowick, I.
Waslawick, aye. West.
West no.
West, no. Winkler. Winkler, aye. Walgamot.
Wolgamott I.
Walgamot, aye. Zhang J.
Zhongji I.
Zhang J, aye. Zhang T.
Zhong Ti I.
Zhang T, aye. Joachim.
Joachim, I.
Joachim, aye. Speaker Hortman, excused. Albright.
Albright, no.
Albright, no. Hertos. Hertos.
Hertosh no.
Hertos.
Hertosh no.
Hertos, no. Scott.
Scott, no.
Scott, no.
Scott, no.
There being 82 ayes and 51 nays, the motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk, and the clerk will report the amendment.
O'Neill moves to amend House File Number 3156, the second, and Grossman as amended. The amendment is coded A16.
To the author of the amendment, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, before I describe the A16, I would like to ask for a roll call.
There is a roll call being requested. Do I see 15 hands? Not seeing 15 hands in the chamber, I will now ask members to send an email from their official House email account to hands@house.mn with the words "hand" in the subject line if they would like a roll call vote. We will wait 60 seconds to determine if we have 15 hands for a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, we'll have a roll call vote. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. The A16 reduces the general fund appropriation for a portion of the bill that I've been working on for many, many years, and that is House File 2983, and it has to do with the rape kits. So this changes it from a general fund appropriation that would be additional money, and it reappropriates some money from our 2019 HHS budget bill for the sex offender program. So it takes money from the sex offender program and reappropriates it to fund the bill, House File 2983, which is 4 different parts. And I'll briefly talk about those 4 different parts, even though Chair Mariani did a very nice job. I just want to give a little bit more detail about the bill. So this is a test all rape kit bill. And it is so incredibly important to test all rape kits. As I've been working on this issue for several years, members, I've come across several things. And you know, the Star Tribune did an amazing series on denied justice. And there were many different pieces of information there that was really a treasure trove for us in the legislature to get things right and to expose what's wrong with what happens after rape. And if I'm going to be really brief, after 9 parts of this particular series, the simple answer is what happens after rape is nearly nothing. So we've been working collectively on several different parts of what they exposed, and this is just one of those parts. So if we test all rape kits, what will happen is we will be able to now tie cases together that we didn't have the ability to do before. So if we have somebody that, say, goes to a bar, drops a drug into a woman's drink, drugs her, encourages her in her altered state to go with him, and he rapes her, and he does it in another bar to another woman and another woman, and so on and so on, it is very, very, very hard to tie those cases together, because right now he could be doing it in one law enforcement jurisdiction and then go to another one and go to a different one. And just in the metro alone, there are over 100 different law enforcement agencies. They don't talk to each other on cases like this. And so the very best way to connect all of these cases together is by a CODIS hit. So it goes into the federal DNA database. And of course, there's 4 different components of CODIS, but this sample, if the woman went to get the rape kit done, then that sample would automatically get tested. And if there was DNA present, it would be loaded into CODIS. Well, now you could see all of these related cases, whether they were unknown to the woman or known to the woman. Because the other thing that series pointed out in my own investigation of how these things happen, pointed out to me, is that if someone is a serial rapist, we typically see that they just choose who's ever easiest. Maybe it's a stranger, maybe it is a coworker, maybe it's their own stepdaughter. It really doesn't matter. So there isn't a typology other than the victim is available. So we see that type of serial rapist kind of appear. And that you wouldn't be able to find those connected cases unless you did the test all. So through some of my work for the past 5 or 6 years, this is something that we've developed as especially through CASA and some of their working groups, as something that's incredibly important to tie together different types of cases. The next part of the bill talks about the restricted kit. So the restricted kit is a kit that the woman has said, I'll do the kit, but I don't want it tested. I am not ready. So typically, and sadly, those kits are destroyed sometimes days, weeks, or months after that incident has happened because, quite frankly, hospitals don't have the capacity to keep them indefinitely. So this would direct all of these restricted kits to give the victim more time to think about it to the BCA. They'd be logged in, they'd be kept safely, they would not be destroyed, and they would be kept for a minimum of 30 months. And so what that does is that gets that victim past 2 anniversaries plus 6 months. Those are incredibly important markers in a woman's life after they've gone through rape. So each of those anniversaries can trigger her desire to get justice. And so we're going to keep those for 30 months. The next part of it is that we are doing a uniform consent examination form so that all of the victims are filling out the same form. It was just a technical thing that we found as we were doing investigations. There wasn't a uniform form across the state, and it got to be confusing. And the last thing that's incredibly important for a victim is a searchable database. So each victim that has a rape kit done will have a unique login, and they can privately log in and find out where their kit is. So in legislation that we've already passed, I was the chief author of, it authorized each victim to know where their kit was. But in order to do that, they had to call in to law enforcement and figure out who's got their case and so on and so on. It got to be cumbersome. This way, they can literally log in the privacy of their home and figure out where is their kit. And I have had conversations with the BCA, and I've asked them if they would expand it to include other things of interest to that victim, and they said they could do that as well. So if there were some interest in their case that they could put and let her know that, they would put that in there as well. So what the amendment does is it just changes from new funding to just reappropriate previous funding. And I know that Chair Mariani has got an amendment to my amendment. And before he does his amendment to the amendment, I just want to let the speaker know I do have a question or two for him as he brings forth his amendment to my amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
There's an amendment to the amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Mariani is moving to amend the O'Neill amendment to House File Number 3156, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment to the amendment is coded A18.
Representative Mariani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This amendment essentially shifts away the taking from the Minnesota Sex Offender Program that we see in the O'Neill amendment and pulls the funds instead as a transfer from MNCOR, which is a corrections activity and account, into the Department of Public Safety if the corrections commissioner, if she or he sees that there's a surplus in that fund. Members, MNCOR generates dollars from prison industry work that provides job training opportunities for incarcerated residents. And the proceeds of that will go up and down from year to year, depending on the markets, depending on how many inmates, residents are involved in the program, et cetera. It seems to me, members, that if we're not going to do from the general fund, which we should do straight up, that what we should be doing then is finding accounts where residents in our facilities are generating, that income. let me just say, I do want to express my appreciation for Representative O'Neill's work over the years on this. It's unquestioned that she has done terrific work in regards to this incredible injustice that we've allowed to happen in our state for so long. In the last 2 years, she's been joined from our committee by Representative Mueller from our side of the aisle, who's also brought expertise and incredible passion to this work as well. So there's really been some very good bipartisan efforts in all of this. I do appreciate the concern that Representative O'Neill brings today in searching for an alternative, to pay for this, an alternative to the general fund. But I do think that the most appropriate source for this work is indeed a straight appropriation from our general fund. This work isn't going to be one and done. This is work that's meant to permanently address the failure that we spoke about, that makes it easy, frankly, for violators to get away with violating, the personhood of our fellow Minnesotans. And it's a reality that is present throughout our entire state. I would say that raiding the Minnesota Sex Offender Program really actually works against public safety. The fact is that those resources in the MSOP program are used to conduct treatment for sex offenders. The reality is that we know we can't hold these offenders forever. The Supreme Court has been clear on that. And our best hope to protect the public when they are released is to have and continue to have them be provided treatment and accountability. And so I just can't in good conscience recommend to our colleagues that we adopt the O'Neill Amendment that frankly, I think really harms our public safety. I don't think that's our intent, but I think that is the outcome when we disinvest in those kind of treatment programs. And those programs need to be stable, they need to be strong, they need to be provided over a long period of time. They are designed specifically to prevent the sexual violation of others in our society. And so if we're going to go outside the general fund, a straight up general fund appropriation, then that's the wrong place to pull from. And so I would offer the pulling from the MinCorp as a better place relative to that. Although, frankly, we should be doing this as a straight up long-term commitment from the state, not dependent on the ups and downs of other existing programs that struggle with funding as well.
Representative Mariani, did you request a roll call?
Madam Speaker, I did not, but I will. I'll request a roll call on my amendment.
Are there 15 hands? Given that there are far less than 15 DFLers in the chamber. Folks, I will now ask members to send an email from their official House email account to hands@house.mn with the word hands in the subject line if you would like a roll call. Representative Mariani requested a roll call on the amendment to the O'Neill Amendment. There being 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussion to the Mariani Amendment to the O'Neill Amendment. Representative O'Neill?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that, Madam Speaker. I realize that we have a new Madam Speaker, so I'm glad the message got passed along. Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I find this a friendly amendment. We were simply trying to find some source of revenue that wasn't new funding. And I would just point out for my colleagues, just so they understand my thought process behind taking some money from the sex offender program and putting it towards rape kits. So this is MSOP. So this is they're under the control of HHS. These are the civilly committed men that are in the MSOP program, so Minnesota Sex Offender Program. I think only 2 have been released since it started. So these folks are there for a very, very long time. I've actually visited myself. They are civilly committed. They are not compelled to do sex offender treatment. They are free to either do the program or not do the program. And the day I was there, the vast majority chose not to do the program. So I just felt like these are folks that are going to be there for a very, very long time. And we could certainly get through this COVID epidemic and shift funding in the short term. But regardless of that, I still see the amendment to my amendment, the Mariani amendment, as a friendly amendment. I would encourage my members to vote for it. But before we do that, I do have a question for Representative Mariani, and if he would yield.
Representative Mariani, will you yield?
Yes.
He will. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was looking back at some of my documentation and realized that when we had some funding come before us as a request from the Department of Corrections, so this is the emergency funding because of COVID, and I look back and I saw that there was $790,000 specifically for MNCOR kind of as a deficit funding, and also $127,000 specifically for inmate confinement fund, which totals just under $1 million that they felt they were short within the MNCOR program. So my concern would be that we would put the MNCOR program into deficit if we did this. And maybe you know more than I do if you've had communications with the Department of Corrections, but if we shifted $3,096,000 from their funds, is that going to then short them and put them in a deficit? And I thank you, Representative Mariani, for thinking of this, but I just want to make sure we aren't making them, causing them to be in deficit spending.
Representative Mariani.
Well, Madam Speaker and Representative O'Neill, and you and I have done some really good work together, but I have to say, the question is also applicable in terms of your original amendment of going after the MSOP program. My understanding is that there's a deficit in that program as well. And that's why I really preface all this by saying that, instead of doing this, what we ought to really say and do is that this is of such vital importance that we should be doing this straight up as an appropriation from our general fund, as opposed to looking around for programs that are in deficit. I believe that the MNCOR program may well be unable to cover this amount. What I'm trying to do is to avoid us going after a program that is meant precisely to protect the public, that's meant precisely to provide the long-term treatment for those who are at a high risk to reoffend, knowing that we cannot keep them forever under detention per the Supreme Court. We had an opportunity in committee to vote as the provisions of this bill was coming forward. We had members on your side of the aisle that didn't vote in order to provide the funding for rape kits right out of the general fund here. I know that was a painful decision on your part, Representative O'Neill, but the fact of the matter is that opportunity was before you, just as it is before you and others today. And yet we're looking for unstable ways to provide for what should be a basic guarantee on the part of our state to every man and woman in this state who gets violated by someone else, that the evidence of that violation will be seriously looked at, tested, and then forwarded in order to hold their violators accountable. And so, you know, it's really difficult for me just to focus only on the MNCOR program, because we need to be focusing, and frankly, even just focusing on the MSOP program, because what we really need to be focusing on is the duty that we have as a state to every man, woman, and child in Minnesota who is sexually violated. And the way to best do that isn't through these, rating of these accounts. Your amendment really triggers an alternative search. Although, again, as we move forward with this, I'm going to be insisting that we own this straight up as a straight up general fund appropriation. So, I hope that answers your question. Not looking to pick a fight for you, but on the other hand, I'm really disappointed that you and I are both caught up in going down this spiral here when there's really a simple, straight up, proposal in the original bill before us.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No, and Representative Chair Mariani, we are on the same page, and I had expressed this when the bill came through committee. We find ourselves in a completely different fiscal situation than when we started this path. We have incredibly difficult decisions ahead of us. I'm going to encourage my members to vote yes on your amendment to my amendment. I think that the point's been made. We need to find a way to balance everything. I understand that you and I are both on the exact same page of how incredibly important this piece of legislation is, that it is groundbreaking, really, for victims. It is probably one of the best things that's happened for justice in 10 years. It's something that I know, I remember working back with Caroline Palmer when she was Mincasa's lobbyist, and now she's with the Department of Health with Safe Harbor. But she was expressing to me when I first started working on all this that she'd been working on test all rape kits for some time and was expressing how incredibly important it was. And honestly, it's taken us years to come to the place where everyone is on the same page. And I couldn't be more thrilled. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in the middle of a global pandemic and a $4 billion shift from surplus to deficit in our budget. And so I want to find some way to make this work. With that, I would encourage members to support the Mariani amendment to the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
Madam Speaker, if I may, based on my colleague Representative O'Neill encouraging her colleagues to vote for this amendment, I'm going to withdraw my call for roll call.
Representative Mariani withdraws his request for a roll call. In the interest of the chief clerk's throat, I think that's a great move. Any further discussion to the Mariani amendment to the O'Neill amendment? No. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The Mariani amendment to the O'Neill amendment is adopted. We are back on the O'Neill amendment. Any discussion?
Madam Speaker.
Representative Mariani.
Madam Speaker, I'm wondering if Representative O'Neill would also withdraw a roll call. We'll just accept this and continue to save the chief clerk's voice as we go forward.
We've had such a nice chat here today. Representative O'Neill, I guess the offer is, would you withdraw your amendment?
And I would support
Withdraw your request for a roll call. Got it. I'm catching up.
Do I have the floor, Madam Speaker?
You do, Representative O'Neill.
Okay, I didn't want to speak out of turn. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know that a positive vote on this is incredibly important to everyone in the chamber, and I would continue to ask for a roll call, but thank you for the offer.
She declines the offer, so we will have a roll call on the O'Neill amendment, despite the pleasant conversation and our concern for the chief clerk's throat. Any further discussion on the O'Neill amendment? that everybody's going to vote for, probably. All right, hearing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
Acom.
Acom, aye.
Acom, aye. Albright.
Albright, aye.
Albright, aye. Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Anderson, aye. Backer.
Backer, aye.
Backer, aye. Bonner. Bonner.
Pass.
Pass. Bonner, pass. Barr. Barr, aye. Baker. Baker, aye. Becker, Finn.
Becker Finn, aye.
Becker, Finn, aye. Bennett.
Bennett, aye.
Bennett, aye. Bernardi.
Bernardi, aye.
Bernardi, aye. Bierman.
Bierman, aye.
Bierman, aye. Bowl.
Bow, aye.
Bowl, aye. Brand.
Brand, aye.
Brand, aye. Cantrell.
Cantrell, aye.
Cantrell, aye. Carlson, A.
Carlson, A, aye.
Carlson, A, aye. Carlson, L.
Carlson, L, aye.
Carlson, L, aye. Christensen.
Christensen, aye.
Christensen, aye. Claflin.
Claflin, aye.
Claflin, aye. Considine.
Considine, aye.
Considine, aye. Daniels.
Daniels, aye.
Daniels, aye. Doubt.
Doubt, aye.
Doubt, aye. Davids. Davids, aye. Davney.
Davney, aye.
Davney, aye. Dean.
Dean, aye.
Dean, aye. Damath. Damath, aye. Detmer.
Detmer, aye.
Detmer, aye. Driscollowski.
Druskowski, aye.
Driscollowski, aye. Eklund.
Eklund, aye.
Eklund, aye. Edelson.
Edelson, aye.
Edelson, aye. Elkins.
Elkins, aye.
Elkins, aye. Erickson.
Erickson, aye.
Erickson, aye. Fabian.
Fabian, aye.
Fabian, aye. Fisher.
Fisher, aye.
Fisher, aye. Franzen.
Franson, aye.
Franzen, aye. Freiberg.
Freiberg votes yes.
Freiberg, aye. Garofalo. Garofalo, aye. Gomez. Gomez. Green.
Green, aye.
Green, aye. Grossel.
Grossel, aye.
Grossel, aye. Grunhagen.
Grunegan, aye.
Grunhagen, aye. Gunther.
Gunther, aye.
Gunther, aye. Haley.
Haley, aye.
Haley, aye. Halverson. Halverson, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Hanson.
Hanson, aye.
Hanson, aye. Hassan. Hassan. Hausman.
Hausman, aye.
Hausman, aye. Heinrich.
Heinrich, aye.
Heinrich, aye. Heinzman.
Heinzman, aye.
Heinzman, aye. Her.
Her, aye.
Her, aye. Hertos.
Hertos, aye.
Hertos, aye. Hornstein.
Bornstein, aye.
Hornstein, aye. Howard.
Howard, aye.
Howard, aye. Hewitt.
Hewitt, aye.
Hewitt, aye. Johnson. Johnson. Johnson, aye. Jordan.
Jordan, aye.
Jordan, aye. Jurgens.
Jurgens, aye.
Jurgens, aye. Keel.
Keel, aye.
Keel, aye. Cleavorn.
Cleaborn, aye.
Cleavorn, aye. Cagle.
Cagle, aye.
Cagle, aye. Katiza Watun. Katiza Watun. Kosnick.
Cosmic, aye.
Kosnick, aye. Kreshaw.
Grisha, aye.
Kreshaw, aye. Kunish Podine.
Kunish Podine, aye.
Kunish Podine, aye. Lehman.
Lehman, aye.
Lehman, aye. Lee. Lee, aye. Lesh.
Lesh, aye.
Lesh, aye. Liebling.
Liebling, aye.
Liebling, aye. Lean.
Lean, aye.
Lean, aye. Lilly.
Lily, aye.
Lilly, aye. Lippert.
Lippert, aye.
Lippert, aye. Listlegard.
Litzlegard, aye.
Listlegard, aye. Long.
Long, aye.
Long, aye. Lucero.
Lucero, yes.
Lucero, aye. Lewick.
Lewick, aye.
Lewick, aye. Mahoney.
Mahoney, aye.
Mahoney, aye. Mann.
Man, I.
Mann, aye. Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani, aye. Markwart.
Markwart, aye.
Markwart, aye. Mason.
Mason, I.
Mason, aye. McDonald.
McDonald, aye.
McDonald, aye. Mecklen.
Meckland, aye.
Mecklen, aye. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye. Moeller.
Moeller, I.
Moeller, aye. Moran.
Moran, I.
Moran, aye. Morrison.
Morrison, I.
Morrison, aye. Munson. Munson, aye. Murphy.
Murphy, I.
Murphy, aye. Nash. Nash, aye. Nelson M.
Nelson M, aye.
Nelson M, aye. Nelson N.
Nelson N, aye.
Nelson N, aye. New. New, aye. Nor.
Nor, aye.
Nor, aye. Nornis.
Nornis, aye.
Nornis, aye. Novotny.
Novotny, aye.
Novotny, aye. O'Driscoll. O'Driscoll, aye. Olson. Olson, aye. O'Neill.
O'Neill, I.
O'Neill, aye. Pulowski.
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Purcell.
Purcell, aye.
Purcell, aye. Petersburg.
Petersburg, aye.
Petersburg, aye. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Poppy.
Poppy, I.
Poppy, aye. Poston.
Poston, aye.
Poston, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, I.
Pryor, aye. Quam.
Quam, aye.
Quam, aye. Richardson.
Richardson, I.
Richardson, aye. Robbins.
I.
Robbins, aye. Runbeck.
Runback, I.
Runbeck, aye. Sandell.
Sandell, aye.
Sandell, aye. Sandsted.
Sandsted, I.
Sandsted, aye. Sauk.
Salk, aye.
Sauk, aye. Schumacher.
Schumacher, aye.
Schumacher, aye. Schultz.
Schultz, I.
Schultz, aye. Scott.
Scott, I.
Scott, aye. Stevenson. Stevenson. Sundin.
Sundin, aye.
Sundin, aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye. Tabke.
Tabke, aye.
Tabke, aye. Tice.
Tice, I.
Tice, aye. Torkelson.
Torkelson, aye.
Torkelson, aye. Erdahl. Erdahl, aye. Vang.
Vang, I.
Vang, aye. Vogel.
Vogel, aye.
Vogel, aye. Wagenius.
Wagenius, I.
Wagenius, aye. Wozlowick.
Wozlowick, I.
Wozlowick, aye. West.
West, aye.
West, aye. Winkler. Winkler, aye. Wogamot.
Wogamot, aye.
Wogamot, aye. Zhang Jie.
Zhong J, aye.
Zhang Jie, aye. Zhang Ti.
Zhong T, aye.
Zhang Ti, aye. Joachim.
Joachim, pass.
Joachim, pass. Speaker Hortman. Speaker Hortman, aye. Bonner.
Bonner, I.
Bonner, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, I.
Gomez, aye. Hassan. Hassan. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, I.
Katiza Watun, aye. Stevenson. Stevenson.
Stevenson, aye.
Stevenson, aye. Joachim.
Joachim, I.
Joachim, aye.
There being 133 ayes and 0 nays, the motion prevails, the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Johnson B. moves to amend House File Number 3156, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A20-0792.
Representative Johnson.
Madam Speaker, members, what this amendment does is remove Section 7 of this bill. Section 7 is the temporary emergency power of the Commissioners of Corrections for early release of prisoners in our system. The reason I bring this forward is right now it is not needed. On May 6th, Commissioner Schnell, the Commissioner of the Department of Corrections, in committee testified when we were talking about this provision that is no longer needed. He stated he has ample existing authority to deal with early release at this time. Now, there are 4 basic provisions for him to consider when he's doing early release. He can do a conditional medical release, a work release, chemical dependency, programming for nonviolent drug offenders, and the challenge incarceration program, commonly known as boot camp for prisoners. Right now, he does have the authority for an early 90-day release. This bill would double that time, or the provision in this bill would double that time. Not only did he say that he didn't need it in committee on March 6th, or May 6th, earlier he admitted it and stated that same thing on an NPR interview. Now, one thing that I'm concerned about with early release is something that has happened in California, where their governor released a number of inmates from the correctional facilities and stated that no bail for those that are arrested. The Fresno County Sheriff, Margaret Mims, stated that she is not going to enforce the stay-at-home law because she's too busy rearresting those that they've already arrested and had to release. Now, this amendment this portion of this bill was not brought forth by the Commissioner of Public Safety or by the Commissioner Schnell from the Department of Corrections. This was brought to the committee by the ombudsman for the prisoners or the person representing the prisoners in our corrections facility, Mark Hazy. So with this amendment, removing this, you're doing one of 2 things. One, either voting to stand behind those who are victims of crime, or 2, standing behind those who committed crime. Madam Speaker, I would request a roll call on this.
Representative Johnson requests a roll call. Are there 15 hands? Not seeing 15 hands in the room. Folks who would like a roll call should please email hands@house.mn with the word hands in the subject line if they would like a roll call. There being 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussion. Representative Mariani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And let me just say I'm greatly disappointed by this amendment. As I stated at the beginning, the language in Section 7 was actually constructed by a Republican colleague, also someone from the other side of the aisle, as we approached our work in public safety the same way I suspect every other committee did once the pandemic became a reality for us, which is it was really important for us to put aside partisan posturing, differences that we may have in order to focus on one thing and one thing only.
Okay.
And that is, how do we best keep the state of Minnesota safe from this existential threat? And so I walked into that hearing with much stronger language that did come from the office of the ombudsperson. But what we heard from the department It's true, they did not make this request. I think that the administration has been very careful to be able to balance the powers that we needed to make sure that the executive had to be able to act quickly and smartly in the face of a fast, growing threat. And so the commissioner was certainly availing himself of the tools that were available right now. The bottom line, though, that we heard from the ombudsperson's office is that those tools may not be enough, that those tools were not constructed, developed, designed to respond to a pandemic. And so he urged us to take much stronger action, and it's temporary action, to be able to make sure that we are able to maximize public health protocols, social distancing in confined spaces. You can all only imagine just how incredibly daunting and difficult that is. And yet, we do have to maintain people in these facilities, right? So the recommendation that I had shaped was from the ombudsperson. My colleagues on the other side said, no, wait a minute, you can't be letting those violent offenders out. And so we said, you know what, we agree with you. We still think it would provide additional room for the commissioner to be able to do everything he can to make sure that he was not endangering the lives of these residents and also not endangering the lives of our public servants, of our correction officers, our nurses, our educators, our therapists who work in these facilities. And by the way, by extension, their family members that they go home to every night or in the morning if they're working the night shift. And by extension, the communities in which their family members all interact. And so we said, you know what? Let's take the Republican amendment and let's adopt that and let's move forward with even just a little bit better. There are strong conditions here, as there are in current statutes. We focused on nonviolent offenders. We focused on low risk to reoffend. There has to be a release plan. There has to be the sharing of names and information of who, where the person is going to be residing with. There has to be notification of victims. Supervision doesn't go away. Supervision continues. And so this is as smartly and carefully drafted as one would expect from a good professional at the Office of Ombudspersons. And it's the work that we have to be able to do to temporarily, in a temporary way rather, to maximize our ability to protect all Minnesotans, those who reside in these facilities, but also the communities in which these facilities reside, and the entire state. And so, members, I would urge you to say no, vote no on the Johnson amendment. It seems to me that we had arrived at a point where we were agreeing that there was something much more important here than, than public health, or rather that public health is much more important than whatever issues that other individuals continue to have over us having a very careful plan to create environments in our facilities that can maximize the health of Minnesotans. I would encourage your no vote.
Any further discussion to the Johnson amendment? The clerk will take the roll on the Johnson amendment. Members, the clerk will take the roll in alphabetical order. It would be helpful if you would answer when your name is called the first time.
Acom.
Acom, no.
Acom, no. Albright.
Albright, aye.
Albright, aye. Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Anderson, aye. Backer.
Backer, aye.
Backer, aye. Bonner.
Bonner, no.
Bonner, no. Barr. Barr, aye. Baker. Baker, aye. Becker, Finn.
Becker, Finn, no.
Becker, Finn, no. Bennett.
Bennett, aye.
Bennett, aye. Bernardi.
Bernardi, no.
Bernardi, no. Bierman.
Bierman, no.
Bierman, no. Bow.
Bo, aye.
Bow, aye. Brand.
Brand, no.
Brand, no. Cantrell. Cantrell.
Cantrell, no.
Cantrell, no. Carlson, A.
Carlson, A, no.
Carlson, A, no. Carlson, L. Carlson, L. Christensen.
Christensen, no.
Christensen, no. Claflin.
Claflin, no.
Claflin, no. Considine.
Considine, no.
Considine, no. Daniels.
Daniels, yes.
Daniels, aye. Doubt.
Doubt, aye.
Doubt, aye. Davids. Davids, aye. Davney.
Dabney, no.
Davney, no. Dean.
Dean, no.
Dean, no. Damath. Damath, aye. Detmer.
Detmer, aye.
Detmer, aye. Dreskowski.
Ruskowski, aye.
Dreskowski, aye. Eklund.
Eklund, no.
Eklund, no. Edelson.
Edelson, no.
Edelson, no. Elkins.
Elkins, no.
Elkins, no. Erickson.
Erickson, I.
Erickson, aye. Fabian.
Fabian, aye.
Fabian, aye. Fisher.
Fisher, no.
Fisher, no. Franzen.
Franson, I.
Franzen, aye. Freiberg.
Freiberg votes no.
Freiberg, no. Garofalo. Garofalo. Garofalo, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, no.
Gomez, no. Green.
Green, aye.
Green, aye. Grossel.
Grossel, aye.
Grossel, aye. Grunhagen.
Grunhagen, aye.
Grunhagen, aye. Gunther.
Gunther, aye.
Gunther, aye. Haley.
Haley, aye.
Haley, aye. Halverson. Halverson, no. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Hanson.
Hanson, no.
Hanson, no. Hassan.
Hassan, no.
Hassan, no. Hausman.
Hausman, no.
Hausman, no. Heinrich.
Heinrich, aye.
Heinrich, aye. Heinzman.
Heinzman, aye.
Heinzman, aye. Herr.
Her, no.
Herr, no. Hertos.
Hertos, aye.
Hertos, aye. Hornstein.
Hornstein, no.
Hornstein, no. Howard.
Howard, no.
Howard, no. Hewitt.
Hewitt, no.
Hewitt, no. Johnson. Johnson, aye. Jordan.
Jordan, no.
Jordan, no. Jurgens.
Jerkins, aye.
Jurgens, aye. Keel.
Keel, aye.
Keel, aye. Cleavorn.
Cleavorn, no.
Cleavorn, no. Cagle.
Cagle, no.
Cagle, no. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, no.
Katiza Watun, no. Kosnick.
Kosnick, aye.
Kosnick, aye. Krisha.
Krisha, aye.
Krisha, aye. Kunish Podine.
Kunish Podine, no.
Kunish Podine, no. Lehman.
Lehman, aye.
Lehman, aye. Lee. Lee, no. Lesh. Lesh.
No.
Lesh.
Lesh, no.
Lesh, no. Liebling.
Liebling, no.
Liebling, no. Lean.
Lean, no.
Lean, no. Lily.
Lily, no.
Lily, no. Lippert.
Lippert, no.
Lippert, no. Lislegard.
Listlegard, no.
Lislegard, no. Long.
Long, no.
Long, no. Lucero.
Lucero, yes.
Lucero, aye. Lewick.
Lewick, aye.
Lewick, aye. Mahoney.
Mahoney, nay.
Mahoney.
Mahoney, nay.
Mahoney, no. Mann.
Man, no.
Mann, no. Mariani.
Mariani, no.
Mariani, no. Markwart.
Markwart, no.
Markwart, no. Mason.
Mason, no.
Mason, no. McDonald.
McDonald, yes.
McDonald, aye. Mecklin.
Mecklin, aye.
Mecklin, aye. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye. Moeller.
Moeller, no.
Moeller, no. Moran.
Morant, no.
Moran, no. Morrison.
Morrison, no.
Morrison, no. Munson. Munson. Murphy.
Murphy, no.
Murphy, no. Nash. Nash, aye. Nelson, M.
Nelson M, no.
Nelson, M, no. Nelson, N.
Nelson N, aye.
Nelson, N, aye. New. New, aye. Nor.
No, no.
Nor, no. Nornis.
Nornis, aye.
Nornis, aye. Novotny.
Novotny, aye.
Novotny, aye. O'Driscoll. O'Driscoll, aye. Olson. Olson, no. O'Neill.
O'Neill, aye.
O'Neill, aye. Pulowski.
Pulowski, no.
Pulowski, no. Purcell.
Purcell, no.
Purcell, no. Petersburg.
Petersburg, aye.
Petersburg, aye. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, no.
Pinto, no. Poppy.
Poppy, no.
Poppy, no. Poston.
Poston, aye.
Poston, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, no.
Pryor, no. Quam.
Quam, aye.
Quam, aye. Richardson.
Richardson, no.
Richardson, no. Robbins.
Robbins, aye.
Robbins, aye. Runbeck.
Runback, aye.
Runbeck, aye. Sandell.
Sandell, no.
Sandell, no. Sandsted.
Sandsted, no.
Sandsted, no. Sauk.
Sauk, no.
Sauk, no. Schumacher.
Schumacher, yes.
Schumacher, aye. Schultz.
Schultz, no.
Schultz, no. Scott.
Scott, yes.
Scott, aye. Stevenson.
Stevenson, no.
Stevenson, no. Sundin.
Sundin, no.
Sundin, no. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye. Tabke.
Tadke, no.
Tabke, no. Tice.
Tice, aye.
Tice, aye. Torkelson.
Torkelson, aye.
Torkelson, aye. Erdahl. Erdahl, aye. Vang.
Vang, no.
Vang, no. Vogel.
Vogel, aye.
Vogel, aye. Wagenius.
Wagenius, no.
Wagenius, no. Wozlowick.
Wozlowick, no.
Wozlowick, no. West.
West, aye.
West, aye. Winkler. Winkler, no. Wagamot.
Wogamot, no.
Wagamot, no. Zhang J.
Zhang J, no.
Zhang J, no. Zhang T.
Zhang T, no.
Zhang T, no. Joachim.
Joachim, no.
Joachim, no. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman, no. Carlson L.
No.
Carlson L, no. Munson. Munson.
There being 58 ayes and 75 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 3156, as amended.
Third reading as amended. Discussion to the bill. On the list, I have Lesh, Detmer, O'Neill, and Mariani. If there's anybody else, let your caucus leader know. Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise today to thank Representative Mariani for carrying this bill. I really appreciate the work that he put into negotiating deals with the Republicans on our side as well as with the Senate. I will vote an enthusiastic aye on this bill at the end. But I did want to highlight one item which was not in the bill, and something with which I'm very disappointed that it didn't make it in, not due to anything that Chair Mariani did, but it was due to the fiscal note on House File 1061. House File 1061 was ending the driver's license suspensions. It had bipartisan, bicameral support every single year going back at least 4 years. This was originally Representative Zerwas's bill in 2018. Or before that, actually, he carried it because this goes back 4 sessions. It was included in the Omnibus Prime Bill in 2018. It had bipartisan authors, Representative Albright, McDonald, Baker. The chief author in the Senate was Senator Hall, and co-authors included Senator Gazelka and Engebretson, and Representative Johnson carried it in his omnibus bill out of public safety that year. Once the chamber changed over, I took authorship of it and was proud to carry it. Now, I would say in 2018, the fiscal note on that when it was passed in Omnibus Prime was zero. It was zero cost because we stopped suspending people's driver's licenses. Somehow, the following year, the Department of Public Safety implemented a new system called FAST that began double counting and stacking fees. And suddenly the fiscal cost on that bill went up to $3 million. Our jaws dropped. And we were not able to get the language in this year's bill because obviously the fiscal note. Last night at 8:33 p.m., I received a revised fiscal note on that bill after a couple years of wrangling with the Department of Public Safety that in fact the revised fiscal note was not $1.5 million a year, but was in fact $237,000 a year. But it was a day late and a dollar short. And I'm really disappointed that that couldn't be done or agreed to ahead of time because there's no reason why we should not have had a department and legislators working together to resolve this prior to the time when it became too late at Wednesday at noon when amendments were due for the Ways and Means Committee. So it is my hope that we can get this done in a special session. There are drivers that need to complete and get to their jobs and not have their licenses suspended this year during the pandemic. It's critical that we get it done. And I hope in light of the fact that we got this fiscal note so late, we could still get this in a special session. But the bill overall is a very good bill. I'm just disappointed that this is not in it. I thank Chair Mariani and everyone who worked on this. That's all I have, Madam Speaker.
The member from Washington, Representative Detmer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I too have a bill that should have been part of this bill, and it's House File 492. As the author remembers, back a few months ago, I had a bill 492 that was heard in the Transportation Committee, and it was unanimously voted to pass, and it was sent to the General Register. And the bill 492 dealt with a situation where a young gal was killed in a car accident, and the person who went through a stop sign got off with a $130 fee. There's a box in the document that has to be filled out by the law enforcement. The box was not checked when there's a death or a serious injury. And the person who went through the stop sign got off with a $130 fee. So basically what my bill would have done is to make it a misdemeanor if the vehicle operator violates the traffic or motor vehicle regulations and causes great bodily harm or death. A court hearing would be mandated. It's would be effective then. Under the current law, there's a default petty misdemeanor penalty in a chapter of statutes governing traffic regulations, motor vehicle equipment, and vehicle size and weight allowances. And so my bill was sitting on the general register, and Chair Mariani said, no, I need to hear that bill. So I said, fine. He is the chair, and he brought it back to his committee, and I put in for a request for a hearing, and that hearing never happened. I'm very disappointed in Chair Mariani that the bill was brought into his committee because he wanted it, and then there was no hearing. This family has been waiting for quite a while, and the legislation was put together along with the county attorney at Chisago County and our nonpartisan research people, and it's a good bill, and the family basically just would hope that something like this would never happen to another family. So on that, Chair Mariani, I'm very disappointed. And hopefully, again, I'll try again next year. It's something that we need to do for our state. Thank you so much.
The member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. It was an absolute pleasure to serve on the Public Safety Committee. Very long. We had incredibly long hearings, but the work across the aisle was really amazing. I honestly don't disagree with the funding in this bill, other than we don't have the money. But being the lead of corrections, I know that they need additional financial support because they've been paying overtime, and we've had multiple conversations about forced overtime and how much each corrections officer has to work, and they're having a really difficult time hiring new corrections officers. I understand all that, and I know that they need it. I have been loud and vocal in both the corrections subcommittee and in the public safety committee, saying we've got to figure this out. We absolutely have got to figure out how to fill the slots and give some relief to those that are working forced overtime. I've heard stories of people bringing their fish houses and putting them on the parking lot, and they didn't have enough time to sleep any other way, so they would go and sleep in their fish house and then go back to work. I've heard of people sleeping in on top of benches in the workout room, in staff lounges, all over the place, just trying to get enough rest so they could go back to work again. The working conditions are absolutely unacceptable. And without something being done, they are going to break. I don't know how those officers have worked for this long under this kind of stress, particularly after we talk about what happened with Officer Gom. And my sincere condolences to his family. I was there at the 1-year anniversary memorial service for him, and it was just heartbreaking. I understand all of that. I just don't know where the money will be coming from. So you could hear the exchange back and forth between Chair Mariani and I. We were trying to figure out how to fund the sex assault kit bill. I don't know where we're going to come up with another $19.3 million to fund these incredibly high needs. I understand how high these needs are. I don't disagree one bit. We look at the Community Corrections Act subsidy. Community Corrections is incredibly underfunded. We heard that in committee and how much their deficit is. And I don't think 3.9 million is even close enough to where they actually are going to need additional support. We talked about the Alternatives to Incarceration program that I had done, which was in pilot form right now, and we wanted to expand it across the state. And so when someone had multiple technical violations, we wanted for them to get treatment instead of going back to prison to serve out their time for a technical violation if the source of the violations were their relapse. So we talked about all of these things. And then the pandemic happened. And our $1.5 billion surplus was swept away in this pandemic, and now we find ourselves in a $2.5 billion deficit. I don't disagree with a single dollar in this bill. I would love to support this bill. I just don't know where the money is coming from. We don't have it. So I also want to say, Chair Lesh, I would support your bill 100%. I hope if we come into special session again, I have an inkling we probably will. Let me know what I can do to help, because we would love to see that get across the finish line. I am incredibly supportive of that, and I am disappointed it didn't land in this bill. And again, by death of fiscal note, unfortunately. So let's get that across the finish line. The last thing I'd like to say, members, is I want to draw your attention to something that has not been discussed. And that is, there is a bill here, House File 4578, the Freiberg bill. Now, it would seem rather innocuous, but it's really not. It's really, really difficult. It really would tie the hands of the DOC commissioner, which we don't want. This would prohibit him from ever doing double bunking. It is something that we absolutely cannot tie the hands of the commissioner with. It's strange. So on one hand, we're going to give him all this additional authority to do early release. And yes, I wrote much of that language. Really, that was in response to, if the governor decided to do it through executive order, we wanted to at least put some parameters around it and not let people out of prison that, say, had committed domestic assault by strangulation, which was in there with the original language. So we wanted to protect victims as much as we possibly could. So that's why that language was drafted. So on one hand, we're giving the commissioner additional authority to release. And then on the other hand, we're taking away, his ability to double bunk when necessary. So I find that very curious. But as far as the spending goes, I don't disagree with the spending. I just don't know how we're going to pay for it. And just as I did in committee, I'm going to have to do the same thing on the floor, because I still haven't been shown I want to see the numbers. How do we pay for this? So we have a hole of $19.36 million that I don't know how we're going to fill. If we can figure that out, great. But today we haven't figured it out. So I'm going to be voting no on this bill. As much as I would desperately like to vote yes on this bill, I just can't. I don't know where the money's coming from. So thank you, Madam Speaker and members.
The member for Mysanti, Representative Johnson.
Madam Speaker, members, there's a few things in this bill, but first of all, I want to thank Chair Mariani. We've had our differences, but we've had our agreements. The staff that has worked very hard, very diligently, both partisan and nonpartisan staff, and I want to thank them for all their work. Now, this bill, I already talked about one issue with the early release, have some serious issues with that. I want to thank Representative O'Neill for the amendment that was eventually put on in Ways and Means to put some guardrails on the early release 6 months before their release date. Some of the other issues that were talked about was the double bunking issue. Right now, enough inmates have been released from our prisons that there is no double bunking at this current time. So it's that which is a good thing, but some of our prisons were actually designed for double bunking. One of the big issues that I have is the DOC deficit spending, Department of Corrections, the overtime for those great staff. I wish there was a way we could have found a way to fund that. Unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 issue and the governor locking down the state and shutting down the economy, we're looking at it just in this bill alone, $22 million that we need to spend. I guess it's down to 19 now because of an amendment, and about $45 million in the next biennium. But we have a almost $2.5 billion deficit that we have to somehow figure out, and the deficit is larger than our reserve. if there's any way possible, I want to be able to provide the funding for those individuals, that are corrections officers, because they do a fabulous job and they're so vital to our system. I am going to ask that Commissioner Harrington take a look at the entire public safety budget and see if he can find the funds somewhere, at least for this year, to finish out this year, for the funding to be transferred and reallocated to the Department of Corrections, so we can cover the deficit at least for this year. And if he can do that, then I'm almost positive we're going to come back into special session in June, that at that time we can take it up to reallocate those funds. Now, we talked a little bit about the issue with the early release that unfortunately did not come out of this bill because it's not needed. The commissioner says he doesn't need it. But also we have the fact that the governor, if needed, could do it by executive order and does not need the commissioner or anybody else or the legislature authorization to do it, because we're under a peacetime emergency. He does have that authority if it's absolutely needed. So with that, unfortunately, I'm going to have to advise my members on this side of the aisle to vote against this bill because we don't have the funds for it. If there's any way possible, I would love to support the funding part of it. There's some policy issues that I don't agree with that would make it very difficult. But there again, it's a funding issue that's the big problem. So I urge my members and everybody to vote no on this at this time.
The member from Wright, Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was actually just going to have my name pulled from the list, but I couldn't do it quick enough. So I'll just say this. I appreciate the opportunity to sit once again on the Public Safety Committee. I've had the opportunity, the true honor of being a member of the committee for my entire time in office, actually. And I just want to thank Chair Mariani. While I definitely have strong disagreements with many of the bills that we did hear, there certainly was agreement on multiple pieces of legislation. Unfortunately, this bill is one I will not be able to support for the comments that both Representative Johnson and Representative O'Neill have covered, so I won't reiterate them. But thank you once again, Madam Speaker.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I, too, enjoyed my time on the Public Safety Committee, and we talked a lot of very important things. And we spent a lot of late nights. I think we were almost into midnight a couple times, and it remained very congenial. And I thank Chair Mariani for that. But a couple weeks ago, maybe about a week and a half ago, since COVID time really doesn't quite register in my head like other days do, we were in committee, and we asked the question about this bill that is now in front of us. Chair Mariani, tell us about the spending. How are you planning to come up with the money to fund the things that are in this bill? And there was really no answer. We're just going to throw the money out there. Somehow it'll show up. And I don't disagree that there are things in this bill that are important. I think we all feel that way, and you've heard from both sides of the aisle. There are important things in here. But the simple fact of the matter is we don't have the money. We don't know where we're going to get the money. A lot of it's in the tails, which I find pretty irresponsible. Some of it's from this biennium, and we don't have the money. We don't have the money. And, you know, I've tried to teach my children that if you don't have the money, don't really lock yourself into something that requires you to have the money. This is what this bill's doing. And I think that's pretty reckless. We've had great conversations. We've had spirited conversations. Voices may have been raised at times in committee, which I think is healthy. But this is not something that I can support. For the simple fact of the matter is we don't have any idea where the funding that is supposed to be in this bill is supposed to come from. So much like my other colleagues, I'll skip the repetition of their specific statements, but we don't have the money. And while I recognize a lot of work went into the bill, I can't support it because we don't have the ability to look at the citizens of Minnesota in the eye and say, yep, we know where this is coming from, and yeah, we can do this. So I urge a red vote.
Is there any further discussion to the bill? Chair Mariani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for the good debate. I think you could tell by the comments of some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, the healthy tenor and culture of our committee. We certainly did challenge each other quite a bit. I like to think that through it all, we were able to build some strong mutual respect for one another in terms of serving the people of Minnesota well. Representative Nash, you certainly did push my buttons a few times, but quite frankly, I do appreciate you. Let me just say a couple very quick things, that I would just leave you with a big message here. First of all, just a couple small things. On the double bunking issue, I just want to make sure that we're stating that correctly here. It's not true that the language here is a hard stop on the double bunking. What it does is it takes out language which doesn't give the commissioner a choice. So it doesn't prohibit. It takes out that overly prescriptive language in statute that tells the commissioner that he or she must permit. Quite frankly, I think the last thing we as legislators ought to be doing is managing our correctional facilities. We have professionals to do that, from the guard level all the way up to the commissioner. We need them to do that work. On the early release issue, we could talk forever, but I won't. The point on this issue is two. One is we still do not know where this pandemic is going. As we loosen up our societies, it could well be that we're going to have a bounce. It could well be that we'll have a different type of public health threat. I hope to God we don't. But the point is that we don't know. And as we don't know, we should be prepared with as many tools as possible to combat it. And when it comes to us providing authority, because that's what the legislature does, we pass laws, we provide authority. Why would we not want to be part of that, of those parameters of the approach that the commissioner should be guided by, should have the authority, not just from the executive branch, not just from his or her governor, but from us as well. Very quickly, Representative Detmer, on your bill, we will certainly hear your bill. I was terribly disappointed that a number of bills, other bills, were not able to be heard and not able to be moved forward. Fact of the matter is, your bill landed on the floor by avoiding my committee. And a public safety bill should be in a public safety committee at some point. And that's not passing judgment on the merit of your bill. We'll certainly give that a hearing if we're back here again to be able to do that. Representative Lesh, very quickly, brother, I am with you on this issue of the driver's license, and there is broad bipartisan support for that. I have to say, the behavior of our bureaucrats sometimes can be very harmful. And I think this is one area where incredible harm is being caused to Minnesotans all across the state. And we need to fix that. And so I am certainly hopeful that we will come back to that issue, and hopefully soon. But here's my main message, folks. You know, the other day we did a bill. It was a good bill. I think Representative Poppy maybe had it. I voted for it. I supported it. We provided support for farmers. And we found the money to do that. We found the money to do that. Was that a reckless thing to do? Each of us will have to answer that question. I think all of us voted for that. So I think the answer is no. What was important is that we walk with our farmers. That's what was important. But they're not the only people we need to walk with. We need to walk with every Minnesotan. And so, you know, there are certainly members in this chamber, because I've heard these speeches already, you know, earlier in other bills. There are members in this chamber who would measure what we do only in terms of dollars and cents. And it is absolutely important that we pay attention to our finances. Absolutely. Now, here's my question. What is the price that we are willing to pay for doing nothing? For doing nothing in public safety? Are we willing to have the person who is sexually violated pay the price for no justice because the state is okay with their exam kit not being tested? Are we okay? Or rather, what is the price that a victim of a violent crime should pay beyond, you know, the crime itself? Because testing evidence that's involved in their case is something that this body is not willing to find a way to pay for it? Each of us are going to have to answer that question in the next couple of minutes. But as we answer it, I want you to be aware. I want you not to be confused. Someone will pay for our decision. I think we do that together and not expect each victim, each correction officer's family to bear the price that we are not willing to find a way to share among the 5.4 million Minnesotans in this state. It is my privilege to have shepherded this bill to this point so that we can each answer that question of whether public safety matters. My answer is that it does. My answer is that it's not enough to get up and give rosy speeches. It's important that we vote and not just speak, that we vote for those things that matter, because in the end, that's what creates the pressure and the presence for us to find the way. My colleague in the other body has already spoken on this issue. He wants to find a way, but he's not going to be pushed or encouraged to find the way to pay for all the things that everyone here is saying is important if this body votes down those very things. So, members, again, it's my privilege to lay this difficult issue before you. That's what we do in this body. And I hope that you can rise and answer it with an affirmative support for this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members.
The clerk will take the roll on House File 3156.
Acom.
Acom, aye.
Acom, aye. Albright.
Albright, no.
Albright, no. Anderson.
Anderson, no.
Anderson, no. Backer.
Backer, no.
Backer, no. Bonner.
Bonner, aye.
Bonner, aye. Barr. Barr, no. Baker. Baker, no. Becker, Finn.
Becker, Finn, aye.
Becker, Finn, aye. Bennett.
Bennett, no.
Bennett, no. Bernardi.
Bernardi, aye.
Bernardi, aye. Bierman.
Bierman, aye.
Bierman, aye. Bow.
Bo, no.
Bow, no. Brand.
Brand, yes.
Brand, aye. Cantrell.
Cantrell, aye.
Cantrell, aye. Carlson, A.
Carlson A, aye.
Carlson, A, aye. Carlson, L.
Carlson L. Aye.
Carlson L. I. Christensen.
Christensen, I.
Christensen I. Claflin.
Claflin, I.
Claflin I. Considine.
Considine, aye.
Considine I. Daniels.
Daniels, no.
Daniels no. Doubt. Doubt. Davids. Davids no. Davney.
Daphne, I.
Davney I. Dean.
Dean, I.
Dean I. Damath. Damath no. Detmer.
Detmer, no.
Detmer no. Druskowski.
Ruskowski, no.
Druskowski no. Eklund.
Eklund, I.
Eklund I. Edelson.
Edelson, I.
Edelson I. Elkins. Elkins.
I.
Elkins I. Erickson.
Erickson, no.
Erickson no. Fabian.
Fabian, no.
Fabian no. Fisher.
Fisher, I.
Fisher I. Franzen.
Franson, no.
Franzen no. Freiberg.
Freiberg votes yes.
Freiberg I. Garofalo.
Garofalo, no.
Garofalo no. Gomez.
Gomez.
Gomez, I.
Gomez I. Green.
Green, no.
Green no. Grossel.
Grossel, nay.
Grossel no. Grunhagen.
Grunhagen, no.
Grunhagen no. Gunther. Gunther. Haley.
Haley, no.
Haley no. Halverson. Halverson I. Hamilton.
Hamilton, no.
Hamilton no. Hanson.
Hanson, I.
Hanson I. Hassan. Hassan.
Hassan, I.
Hassan I. Hausman.
Houseman, I.
Hausman I. Heinrich.
Heinrich, no.
Heinrich no. Heinzman.
Heinzman, no.
Heinzman no. Her.
Her, I.
Her I. Hertos.
Hertos, no.
Hertos no. Hornstein.
Hornstein, I.
Hornstein I. Howard.
Howard, I.
Howard I. Hewitt.
Hewitt, I.
Hewitt I. Johnson. Johnson no. Jordan.
Jordan, I.
Jordan I. Jurgens.
Jurgens, nay.
Jurgens no. Keel.
Steele, no.
Keel no. Cleavorn.
Cleavorn, I.
Cleavorn I. Cagle. Cagle.
Cagle, I.
Cagle I. Katiza Watun. Katiza Watun.
Watun, I.
Katiza Watun I. Kosnick. Kosnick no. Kreshaw.
Krisha, no.
Kresha no. Kunish Podine.
Konesh Podine, yes, I.
Kunish Podine I. Lehman.
Lehman, no.
Lehman no. Lee. Lee I. Lesh.
Lesh, I.
Lesh I. Liebling.
Liebling, I.
Liebling I. Lean.
Lean, I.
Lean I. Lilly.
Lily, I.
Lily I. Lippert.
Lippert, I.
Lippert I. Lislegard.
Lislegard, I.
Lislegard I. Long.
Long, I.
Long I. Lucero.
Lucero, no.
Lucero no. Lewick.
Lewick, no.
Lewick no. Mahoney.
Mahoney, I.
Mahoney I. Mann.
Man, I.
Mann I. Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani I. Markwart.
Markwart, I.
Markwart I. Mason. Mason.
I am.
McDonald.
McDonald, no.
McDonald no. Mecklin.
Mecklin, no.
Mecklin no. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye. Moeller.
Moeller, aye.
Moeller, aye. Moran.
Moran, aye.
Moran, aye. Morrison.
Morrison, aye.
Morrison, aye. Munson.
Munson, no.
Munson, no. Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Murphy, aye. Nash. Nash, no. Nelson, M.
Nelson M. I.
Nelson, M, aye. Nelson, N.
Nelson N, no.
Nelson, N, no. New. New, no. Nor.
Nor, aye.
Nor, aye. Nornis. Nornis.
Nornis, no.
Nornis, no. Novotny.
Varney, no.
Novotny, no. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, no.
O'Driscoll, no. Olson. Olson, aye. O'Neill.
O'Neill, no.
O'Neill, no. Pulowski.
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Purcell.
Purcell, aye.
Purcell, aye. Petersburg.
Petersburg, no.
Petersburg, no. Pearson.
Pearson, no.
Pearson, no. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Poppy.
Poppy, aye.
Poppy, aye. Poston.
Poston, no.
Poston, no. Pryor.
Pryor, aye.
Pryor, aye. Quam.
Quam, no.
Quam, no. Richardson. Richardson.
Aye.
Richardson.
Richardson, aye.
Richardson, aye. Robbins.
Robbins, no.
Robbins, no. Runbeck.
Runbeck, no.
Runbeck, no. Sandell.
Sandell, aye.
Sandell, aye. Sandsted.
Sandsted, aye.
Sandsted, aye. Sauk.
Aye.
Sauk, aye. Schumacher.
Schumacher, no.
Schumacher, no. Schultz.
Schultz, aye.
Schultz, aye. Scott.
Scott, no.
Scott, no. Stevenson.
Stevenson, aye.
Stevenson, aye. Sundin.
Sundin, aye.
Sundin, aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski, no.
Swazinski, no. Tabke.
Tabke, aye.
Tabke, aye. Tice.
Tice, no.
Tice, no. Torkelson.
Torkelson, no.
Torkelson, no. Erdahl. Erdahl, no. Vang.
Vang, aye.
Vang, aye. Vogel.
Vogel, no.
Vogel, no. Wagenius.
Wagenius, aye.
Wagenius, aye. Wozlowick.
Wozlowick, aye.
Wozlowick, aye. West.
West, no.
West, no. Winkler. Winkler, aye. Wolgamott.
Wolgamott, aye.
Wolgamott, aye. Zhang Jie. Zhang Jie. Zhang Ti.
Young T, aye.
Zhang Ti, aye. Joachim.
Joachim, aye.
Joachim, aye. Speaker Hortman. Speaker Hortman, aye. Doubt. Doubt, no. Gunther. Gunther. Mason.
Mason, aye.
Mason, aye. Zhang Jie.
Zhang Jie, aye.
Zhang Jie, aye.
There being 76 ayes and 58 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to.